Hi everybody, welcome back to the studio. Today I'm going to be starting out on a commission for someone, and I thought it might be a good one to make a lesson out of because it's got a very beautiful graduated sky and then a very simple sea, so I can demonstrate the washes that we're going to put in to achieve those very nicely graded colours and the transitions between the blue of the sky and the more sunset peachy colours. And then it's only got a couple of other elements. An amount of sand, some rocks, so we can talk about the texture of rocks and how to get that, and the jetty receding into the distance, the old wooden jetty. So this is the reference. It's a square canvas I'm going to use. What do we do first with that? First I prime it with a colour, just to give it a coloured background. And today, given the colours in this, I'm going to be doing it a peachy kind of peachy yellow ochre colour all over the canvas to start with. On my palette I have some yellow ochre and a little bit of alizarin. I have a brush that's a little bit wet, and what I'm going to do is just mix those together. Just dip it in a little bit of water, pull it onto this mixing area and mix it very loosely. There we go again. Someday I'll have two cameras running at the same time, and then I can have a shot of an overhead shot of the palette, which would be great. And I'm going to just brush that on. I'm not worried too much about getting it beautifully even at this point because there are going to be layers over the top. This is just my base layer. Just loading a little bit more water on there. Really, I just at this stage want to cover the whole canvas with this colour. I actually like to hold my brush quite low down. I find it gives me better control at this point when I'm just laying this in. Just reaching in and dipping in for a bit more water. Sometimes I might add a little bit more of the red in, make it a bit more peachy in some areas. As I said, just really covering the paper, the canvas, slapping it on, and then I'll work back into it with some horizontal stripes. At this point for this one, I am keeping it fairly horizontal once I've put it on, because all this area is going to be a nice graded wash. You can tell I usually do my demos in pastel because I keep talking about the paper. And that's just about it. Over here I'm keeping the yellow ochre, which I'm going to use. I'm going to be putting in over here ultramarine blue. Next to it I have some cerulean blue, and I will need a whole lot of white, so titanium white there. I'll need a little touch of alizarin red there to help make the peachy glow. I can start mixing these colours up now. So I'm going to first mix up some of the blue for up in the top of the sky. So starting with some ultramarine and a bit of that colour there. I'm probably going to need a bit more, quite a bit of this. Mix that all up together, and it's going to be too dark like that. So I'm going to start adding in white, not too much at a time. So that's probably about the colour I want. It may be slightly dark, but what I do know is I'm going to need more of it. So add back in those colours and add in some more of the white. Over to one side it's lighter, it's going to be darker over this side. This still needs darkening up a bit, so coming back in again with the ultramarine blue. Just keep adding it in there, and now that's a bit darker. As it comes down, I'm going to take a little bit more of this, pop it there. It will be even lighter, but it will also have the faintest touch of violet in it. So I'm taking a tiny little bit of alizarin, mixing those up. To clean my palette knife in between, I'm wiping it on a brush and then on a wet sponge. Then I'm going to move down into the sky, which is more yellow ochre-y, moving into peach on the horizon. So I'm taking some yellow ochre and a touch of alizarin, mixing that up, and it's going to be far too dark like that, so I need to take a whole lot of the white and pop into that as well. That's better, but a little bit more of the red. I'll take a little bit of that, and I'm going to add more red. So that, so it's pinker, and I may add to this a little bit of a cadmium yellow light, just a touch of that. Now I want to loosen that up a little bit, and the way I'm going to do that is add some of the gloss glazing medium, and I'm just going to pour. I'm going to pour a slight amount straight onto those colours, just a little dab on each of them. Just help that come out a bit with my knife, and then I'll be mixing that in just so I can glaze those colours on. Right, so that one gets mixed in, and I'm mixing these up quite well because I want the area that they're in to be very uniform. It's dry now, and what I want to do is establish my horizon line. It's dry now, so I want to put in the horizon line, which is about a quarter of the way down. So I'm measuring this down and putting a little mark on either side. I want to get a very straight horizon line, so I'm actually going to put a mark in the middle as well. And then what I want to do, take my delicate painter's masking tape and run it across there. I've got my wash brush. I have the colours I mixed up before, and I'm just going to start laying them into the sky now. So taking up a nice amount of that blue, starting up in the top corner, loading it in. Load around the corner too, because I don't want to move. Load around the corner and along the top. And what I'm going to do is just lean it forward so I can get the whole top on. Just picking that up, the rest of that, and I'm wanting that mostly over this side of the sky. And then I'll be working in the next colour, so I just pick up some of the next colour and work it across from where I was, just making sure I cover all that underneath, and I keep doing that, so that's going to come over here underneath that, and I'm just laying it on nice and smoothly with that brush, brushing it down. Then I'm picking up the next colour, and with the same brush, I'm not worrying about changing brushes because that will all help with the mixing. And I keep going doing that. So now I've got the top part of the sky blending in, and I just keep picking up the colour above the one I'm working on, and then I'll run it along there. That one just needs a little bit more of the top. So I now have a fairly smooth sky there. I'm going to get rid of that brush now because it's very blue, and I'm just taking another brush and picking up the next colour, which is the yellowy peachy colour, and running that over. I'm starting in the blue and running it into the colours underneath. I don't need to get exactly like the photo reference I have, so I'm not worrying that it's not going on exactly as the photo. I just want it to blend in. I don't really think I've mixed up enough of that colour. That's a lesson to be learned. You need to mix up enough of your colour. What I'm going to do now is take a soft brush, another one of those washy brushes that has that's dry, and I'm just going to feather it, which helps to blend it as well. going back in again with these yellows just to strengthen that up across there. Back in with some peachy colours below that. So just putting in a stripe of the peach. And then the very peach on the horizon line there, really pinky. Pinky colour through there, picking it up with that big washy brush and just running it through. And again, then I just keep going up above it like so. Then I'm going to pick up some more of that yellow, that blue, and run that across and back down into it. So what I'm doing is just blending the edges where they meet. I've got a little bit of paint in there, dried bits of paint in there, so I had to do that to get it out. So I've now got a very nice graded sky there, and there's some clouds will be going in there. I'm going to take my feathering brush again and give it a bit of a feather. Now it's dry, I can take off this masking tape. I'm not sure that I don't want to add some more colour into there, but I'm going to leave it for now, keep going with the painting, and I can work back into it later on. So what I'm going to do is just peel off that. And you can see what a fantastically lovely horizon line, really flat and straight there. I want to work down into the sea now, so I'm going to replace that line just above. The tape goes on just above the horizon line now, and I'm going to work down there. I will have some small area of land to go in there, and I've got all the clouds to go, but I'm going to put the water in to keep these colours, then I'm going to go back into the sky for the clouds. I've kept the palette that I used for the sky, and I'll be using some of that for the water. And I'll be dropping some colour that is going to be coming from those clouds eventually. I'm going to take a big flat wash brush and start off with the pinky yellow colours over in this area. Just collecting it all up. Loading up my brush and running it across that area. Going to add a little bit more of the pink into that as I come across here, and I want some even more pinks and yellows, just mixing them as I go and running them straight across. I'm picking up some of the sky blues now. I'm going to work them in as well. Just picking the whole lot up on my brush, brushing it in. Just to give a smooth kind of look to that to start with. I'm going to need to mix some more of those colours in just a moment. Oops, a little bit of hair on there. Just watch out if you've got a cat in your house, which I do. Sometimes you can get hairs from the most surprising places. And again, when I'm doing this, I'm running the brush all the way across because I don't want any marks in the middle of. I've mixed up some more colours on here, so I'll be putting some of these purpled off blues in as well. And I want these. I just use my fingers to take out any bits that haven't quite mixed up, and I've picked up some dry paint from underneath. I'm adding a bit more paint in now, so it's a little bit thicker, Then I'm picking up some more of the pinks and running those through, and I'll just keep doing that, running through various colours, mixtures of the pinks and the purples and the blues. And it's got a lovely warm undertone from the warm colours that I put on as an underpainting, and that's really helping. And the gloss medium is giving a nice glossy surface to the water. And as I go, I just keep going back in and mixing up more colours. And these are the typical sunrisey, sunsetty colours that we get. Doing this base first, then I'll be adding in some darks, some darker shades as well. I'm going to do off this side as well. It becomes quite a lot pinker and purpler down here. I'm just going to use my brush to brush in some suggestions of lines there where the water comes in. So I don't really want to draw it in at this stage, but I do want some lines to remind me where the water finishes and where the wet sand and the rocks are going to be. And at this stage too, I might just dip my brush in here and draw in some of the major rock shapes, just as a guide. But I don't want it to be exactly like in the in the photo. I'm just using that as a rough guide, and then I'll do a bit of my own composition for the rocks, just to try and help to balance it out. And you can see I'm just putting in big old shapes. I'm taking one in from that corner to make the corner, to sort of cut off the corner so it doesn't leave me too much out of the painting. And some smaller rocks coming in there, and smaller. That's going to be a little bit rounder, I think. A little bit flatter across there. Just dabbing those in. These are going to be smaller rocks out here. Just using the big old flat part of my brush to just block in a few little shapes at this stage. And I'm only using the colour that's on my palette. I'm not worried about getting the actual colour yet. It's just blocking in the ideas of where it is. I think this one might be going to be made a little bit bigger, so it kind of leads into the jetty area. Okay, so I've got the idea of my rocks there. And maybe a little one there. So, whole batch of rocks leading in. The water's looking fairly nice. I want to put more purple in up here, so I'm just going to mix that up now. I'm going to grab a touch of the red quite a bit of that blue and some of the gloss medium and just use up all that's left on there. Touch more red. Mix it all up with a little bit of the white. That's going to be going in here as we go down closer to the sand. The gloss medium does tend to leave marks in there if you're not careful, so I'm being quite careful to brush that out as I move across. So brush it right in and then I take the big sweeping brush strokes across. Again, so I can get it all the way across nice and smooth with no brush marks in there. With quite a lot of layers of colour going in there. Now I'm going to go for some little shots of darker purple in there. Mixing up just a little bit of a darker purple. And then I'm going to use that to make some suggestions of ripply waves coming across there. Just ripples coming all the way in there. Just loading up the tip of my brush, dragging it across. And as I drag it across, it lightens up an area underneath it as well, which creates the light face of that ripple. As you go out further, the ripples become closer together. I'm going to turn over. So as I go out further, the ripples become closer together. I'm now going for a long handled brush with a round tip. I find these quite good for finer lines. And the long handle means you can step back a bit and be a little bit freer with how you're working on there. So I've mixed up a darker blue here and I'm going to start putting that through. I'm going to step over the other side just to help me with this. And there are going to be variations in this as well. There'll be some quite fine lines. Quite fine lines going across. And the jetty too. The jetty will just get painted in, the old jetty stumps will just get painted in over the top. Here I'm just moving around some of the ripples. And there'll be this sand down here needs to go in as well. It's a very purpley, pale purple, mauve sort of colour at the edge of the water there. And that's creating the wet sand. So I'm just adding a little bit of water now, not the gloss medium. There's the rocks we can see there, so pulling that just across, again in those nice smooth strokes across the page, across the canvas. Not worrying about the edge of the rocks because I can deal with those later. It's just getting in those colours. I'm adding a little bit of warm, so I keep occasionally picking up some of the warm yellowy colour to add into the sand as well. That's going to come purple sort of pale mauve colour that is just glazing over the top. of those wavelets coming down into the sandy area there. Those rocks will be there eventually, but right now I'm just glazing in. I want to add some more warmth into this as well, so that's got that nice mauvey sort of colour. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of warmth. That's why it's lovely to keep your palette just with all the colours on it that you've used, and it helps to harmonise the painting by going back and forth with the colours that you've used in other areas. I keep them and then I mix them with another colour. So this is really quite a simple painting in many ways. The problem, of course, with a simple painting is you have to do every element of it well for it to work. People don't get distracted by some very clever part of it you put in, because it's all fairly simple. And so they notice any mistakes anywhere. So I'm just running some of that nice warm colour back into here while it's all wet. The glazing is all wet, and then I'm going to let it dry and I'll layer on some more. I've got the general idea of that water. I'm going to have to put the clouds in shortly and the headland, because I need to drop some of the cloud reflections down in there. What I'm going to do now is peel off the tape again. It doesn't need to be dry this time. You can still see that horizon. You can still see the horizon there, nice